Right, I've been a naughty boy, basically ruined my diet this week, broke all of my usual rules under the sun, virtually anyway, because I had guests virtually all week long, and that meant pastries, meals out, no clear routine every day, day trips on the train where basically everything I ate was on the go, endless coffee breaks, industrial quantities of black coffee were consumed by myself this week. Coffee is not going to do anything from weight loss, weight gain perspective, but all just to illustrate this is not usually how I like to do things, how I like to orient my nutrition, but still, somehow, I woke up every morning lean as a bean. So how did I do it? What was my game plan? Let's use how I handled this week, not as a here's how you should eat every single week of your life, but maybe just to give some examples of how I handle these things in busy, messy, real-life moments to exercise just a little bit of flexibility and still finish the week just as lean, visually anyway, as you started it. I cannot claim that I gained exactly 0 fat this week. I can't, because I was doing all of this visually. There was no DEXA scan at the start and the end of the week. However, if I did gain fat, it was certainly very negligible, which I still take as a win. Even if I gained a tiny bit, that would be a win, because honestly, the composition of my diet this week was really, really poor. It was even worse than Christmas, where I also maintained really good visual leanness as well. So again, how did I do it? Let me break down the 5 tactics that I employed this week. Hopefully, again, this is not an example of how you should eat every week, but this will give you some examples of how to figure out these situations yourself and bend the rules a little bit. First thing then, this is something I do regardless of whether I'm traveling or guests are coming to me. I make sure the step count is really, really high. So we averaged this week 18,000 steps, which is over double what I would, or about double actually, I should say, what I ordinarily do. And some days we were up at 22,000, other days they're a little bit more sedentary, down at sort of 14, 15,000. But calculating this, I averaged around 18,500 steps. Of course, this is not a free pass to eat as much as I want and never have to worry about what I'm consuming or the calories of the deviations that I'm having, because I've done lots of movement, like my step count is really high, I kind of feel really tired by the end of the day. No, it's not a free pass, but it's the peace of mind to know that I've created maybe a small calorie buffer to the tune of maximum couple of hundred extra calories. Again, that's not enough to go hog wild and justify it with at least my steps are high. But like I say, it is that buffer, it's that little bit of wiggle room, and that just created the confidence that, yeah, okay, I don't have to be perfectly in check here because we've done a little bit more movement. And this is my advice to clients when they go on trips that might involve a particularly large amount of indulgences or even off-plan meals, even if they're healthy. Off-plan meals, I always say, look, can you get your steps up a little bit just to give us that little bit of peace of mind? Number 2, I calorie compensated the meals out. The meals out I ate this week, they really were rich. And I actually broke, accidentally at times, or I say accidentally, I was impulsive. I broke a lot of the rules I've got for eating out, and I've shared many times on this channel, such as no appetizers, no desserts, enjoy that entree that's a little bit novel, different from your usual meals. Don't worry that it's a few extra calories, but still try and pick something healthy, but there's invisible dressing sauces, that. Still try and pick something healthy, and we'll do damage control by not having, wine, cocktails, alcohol on the side, bit of cake for dessert, etc., etc., etc. I actually broke loads of those rules this week. I was far from perfect with my meals out this week. What I did do though was compensated by reducing calories elsewhere. And so, for example, my breakfast most days this week was a much reduced bowl of oatmeal where I used basically 30% less oats. I didn't put on 2 types of fruit, only one, mostly chopped apple, rather than using chopped apple and berries or something else. And I didn't do the healthy fat source because I knew I was going to get plenty of fats elsewhere in oils, dressings, etc., etc. So that was, and I didn't do as much snacking as well between meals, like the healthy snacking, the fresh fruit snacks that I usually do, or my little yogurt bowls, or a little protein shake here and there that might add 120 calories. And so Again, all of this calorie compensation around the edges, it just gave me, again, we're talking about buffer, we're talking about wiggle room, it just gave me that little bit of calorie leeway for those more rich meals out, which, again, I was far from perfect with, and I didn't always stick to my MO of pick the most whole foodsy option, but that's how we did it. Elsewhere had fewer calories in summary. Number 3, some days I only actually ate 2 meals, which is not my usual routine by any means, and it was quite weird. I'm a standard 3 meal per day, a couple of snacks in between. I just mentioned snacks, but that's kind of the structure that I usually follow. But we were so busy that it just kind of worked out as 2 meals. And after a couple of days doing it, I realized it was really working in my favor. So I'd either have a small reduced breakfast, or actually in most cases, we were having a late breakfast together, which kind of became a brunch. By the time we actually got round to it, it was more like maybe 11:30, and then you have a big evening meal later with, then with maybe a snack in between at like 3 or 4. And so, again, this is not my usual routine, but you can see how this worked in my favor. It probably doesn't need explaining, but if I go from 3 meals per day to 2 meals per day, this affords more calories effectively. I'm sparing calories effectively for those 2 meals because I'm eating less frequently. I've got more calories to play with. So that in itself, even though it's not my preference, not my usual routine, it just allowed me, again, that calorie buffer when I did finally sit down to eat. What I will comment on, though, is this does inevitably make me more hungry. It's not really a fair test and experiment this week because the composition of my diet was so different to my usual routine. But definitely I notice a big difference in my satisfaction between 3 meals per day that are spaced nice evenly versus this kind of chaotic, very varied size, volume, calorie amount of 2 meals per day with maybe snacks in between, but maybe not. And then just bizarre spacing of maybe 7 to 8 hours per meal. I dare say if I continued, I'd get a little bit more used to it, and I did as the week went on. But I definitely think satisfaction, this was challenging for me, actually, I admit. Tactic number 4, I still hit the gym. And this was easier because I was at home and I had guests visiting me. It would inarguably be more challenging if I was visiting said guests myself, or if I was traveling to a different city. Can you get a one-off gym pass? You're only going to find gyms in your area with monthly memberships. Maybe you don't have the time or the inclination to work out when you're traveling to a new city, whereas guests coming to me, it's still my home. It's still, to a degree, my lifestyle. Does that make sense? So maybe this doesn't fit the bill for you as an example of how to handle your next trip, but I still hit the gym, basically, is bottom line, and that helped me this week because it was only 2 strength workouts, and they were not crazy because I didn't want to spend hours in the gym. I wanted to get back, do things, hang out, meet people again, and there was no extra cardio or anything like that to compensate the calories consumed. The step count was so high, I didn't want to do extra cardio anyway, but it was just still that little bit of extra activity. And although I don't really think of my strength workouts as a form of fat loss, or fat maintenance, weight maintenance, because calories burn. I don't think about my strength workouts as, oh, I'm going to burn 200, 250 calories here. That's not my intention. I want to lift weights because I want to lift weights and yield the return, the benefit physically and mentally that brings, rather than I lift weights to burn calories. No, not necessarily. Otherwise, I would do more cardio because it would be more calorie focused. But inarguably, what it does do is just burn, again, a couple hundred calories. So there's those 2 days on those workout days where I'm burning more calories, and you just lump that in the mix. So if I am having a day where I consume more calories than my usual maintenance level of calories of, say, 2600, 2650, 2700 for me is kind of roughly where my body seems to maintain. Well, yeah, if I've got extra workouts, if I've got that high step count, you can just see it just lifts, not much. Like, it doesn't give you loads of wiggle room to work out. I think people always say you can't out-train a bad diet. Everyone agrees with this, but people definitely overestimate. I experience this a lot with clients, where clients are like, I just burned 600 calories according to my Apple Watch in a workout. They tell me about the workout and I'm like, no way, you're not even at 300 for that kind of workout in my estimation. So it's easy to overestimate the calories with workouts. Anyway, I digress, but that's my opinion on that. But still hitting the gym, again, just contributes to the overall calorie burn over the week, even if just a small way to create that wiggle room or more wiggle room. Hack strategy tactic number 5, finally then. This one for me, the game changer. I've kind of implied this throughout, but I guesstimate the calories for any deviations. And I say guesstimate, this is based on learned experience for doing this years and years and years, and obviously coaching years and years as well. You get really good at looking at something with rice in it and going, well, that's probably 250 calories worth of rice. There's maybe max 270 calories of tofu, but you know what? That's pretty greasy, that's pretty oily. Who knows what's in that marinade? Let's round that up to 450, 500. You get really good at doing this, basically, is what I'm saying. But I still do some Googling. What did I Google the other day? Camelata, olives. Oh yeah, calories in about a cup, because it was about a cup we had between us on the table. Cup of calories in about a cup of Camelata, olives, and then halved it because I had about half, maybe more realistically 2/3, because I'm a little olive gremlin when they're out on the table. And so what I'm then doing with that guesstimated figure is I'm not tracking it or anything like that, but I'm keeping rough score in my head. Thankfully, relatively decent memory, but I'm keeping a rough calorie total in my head over the course of the day. And for me, this is the big game changer, because yeah, I know some people will hear this and they'll be like, Ryan, just relax. It's one day, or it's one visit, it's one trip. And there are moments where I do switch off with my food rules. And I've made videos about how I handle Christmas, birthdays, etc., where I try not to think about any calories or macronutrients or any food rules whatsoever. But this is how I box myself in. This is how I indulge without overeating, at least on the calorie front, because I guesstimate. So over the day, when I'm having all the sweet treats and baked goods we had muffins and we had cruffins, I am estimating them all. I mean, the muffin, in fairness, had a calorie count on it, so I was like, 270 calories. But again, you're still assuming the food label is correct. Right? And do I eat every morsel of it? No, not necessarily. With muffins, there's a good amount that's stuck around the paper thing as well. But I'm not going to minus 20 calories for that either. And this is another hack as well. I didn't know I was going to talk about this, but I over-guesstimate. So I'm talking about guesstimation, but I always go over. So, you know, if I see tofu and I'm like, you know what, there's tofu on my dish here, that's probably about 250 calories of rice, there's some tofu there. If I'm looking at that and I'm like, because I know tofu very well, it's something I eat regularly, I'm like, that's about 250, 280 calories of tofu, but you know what, it's kind of greasy, that marinade feels really rich to me. Let's add 100, 120 calories for the dressing. I mean, that's easily doable with a tablespoon of oil, right? So, you catch my drift. There's always a bit of overestimation with me. And you will forget and miss things over the course of the day, but it's always easier to over-guesstimate than it is to undershoot this as well. But again, this provides me some wiggle room. Again, the advantage of keeping this rough score in my head over the course of the day is I know what I'm working with. So when we get to dinner and I've used 1,200 calories, for example, I know roughly what wiggle room I have when I'm looking at a menu. Now that's tricky because you don't know portion sizes, but these are all little guardrails is the wrong word, but guiding lights as to my decisions for the rest of the day. So just having that score in my head is really, really useful about the calories consumed as the day goes on. Just gives me the structure, just boxes me in, lets me indulge without overeating on the calorie front. And that's why, all of this considered, those 5 points here, even though my diet kind of fell apart, the composition of it was really, really unhealthy this week, I still woke up feeling just as lean every morning. Like I say, I can't guarantee there is zero fat gain here, but if there was, it was definitely negligible. And for me, that's a win and makes me really pleased with how I've handled this week. And you know, the best part of all of this is I'm genuinely excited to get back to my normal routine now. Brilliant. Had a great workout this morning, great breakfast to start the day. Gonna make some lunch after this. Feels absolutely amazing. And the witnessing the taste bud change is a really nice thing because yes, I enjoyed the nostalgia and the taste of the cruffins, that muffin, the pasta dish that I had with the creamy. I used to love like a carbonara in the past. That's not what we had this time, it was tortellini. But you know, I used to love all of these flavors and I enjoyed them. You know what? You'll know what I mean. I enjoyed the first couple of bites of them and then I've like, I kind of prefer my food. I think I make tastier food. I'm biased, but I think I make tastier, healthy meals anyway. They're healthy too and calorie controlled. I think they taste better as well. So, you know, the taste bud change, like the transformation you go through, the inner transformation and outer, but the inner transformation you go through this process, just so validating to like be able to indulge, but genuinely actually miss your diet and get back on track. And for me, yeah, not to sound too trite, cheesy, cliche, but that's a sign of genuine behavior change. right? That's a sign that you've actually changed internally, is when you do go off track, you kind of yearn back for your routine and your normal diet again. So this is how we do it. This is how I bent the rules without breaking them. This is exactly what I help my clients do inside Slim and Sustain for the messy, the busy, the real life, the flexible moments. I don't want to employ these rules every single day of my life, right? Give me my meals, my control, my routine most of the time. But look, a plan that's based on perfect rules all the time, the assumption that every meal you're gonna make is in your home kitchen, that ain't lasting. We can all do that for a couple of weeks. I was gonna say a couple of months, but I think that's a stretch. We can all do that for a couple of weeks, but really, this feels sustainable. You feel like you've found a way to eat for life when you know how to actually negotiate these moments where you're gonna be less than perfect, you don't give yourself too much guilt about it, and most importantly, you get back on track and you're actually excited and happy to get back on track. That's how we do it. If you want more help, you can join Slim and Sustain. Apply to join Slim and Sustain. I'll put the details in a link below. But hopefully, yeah, this gives you some ideas for how to handle your next bit of travel, trip, vacation, messy, busy life moment. See you in the next one.